Welcome to the Random Green Podcast. Yes, podcast. Yes, it's time for a podcast. Now today I'm going to talk to you guys about a important true story. Kind of. Yes, let's just call it a true story. Creatures that finally meet after 334,667,000 years after saying to each other that they're just going to walk. Yes, this is the amazing story of Elizabeth and Holly, who down below the Earth's crust, they roamed, they lived, they inhabited, and they were individuals. What kind of individuals? Well, they were human beings, I think. Maybe, not bacteria quite yet, but back then or maybe they were bacteria, then they became human. Who knows? How do we know? Because we're above ground. We're way above ground. We're not below the Earth's crust. They had a dwelling place down there. They had a society going down there. They knew what was going on. This is over, again, a long time ago. And they finally met up after being away from each other. They just said they were going to go for a walk. And, as you know, planet Earth is actually a pretty big area. It's a big planet. And when you say you're going to go somewhere, you should have, I don't think back then they had GPS tracking devices. They could have, and I don't know. We don't know. According to the information I got, emails and I got to do this story, this amazing podcast. They asked me to do this, and I wouldn't do it if it wasn't true. Obviously, at the Random Green channel, it's about being random, but it's also being a little truthful sometimes. And this is where we have to really trust the information that it's coming. This is not just a made up story. Obviously, I mean, well, it could be, but let's just say for reality that it is reality, and that Elizabeth and Holly wanted to go for a walk. And did they have a little bit of an argument back then? 334,767,000 and some odd 100 years ago? Because this is an amazing story, because I think about the 1940s and 1950s is when they started. This is when they finally met up, but again, when they live below the Earth's crust in a society down there, they live way far underneath the subterranean society. It's hard to get that information across up to the mainland, up to the above ground. But anyway, they're doing well, Elizabeth and Holly. They were very elated to see each other, because they basically, when they went to go for a walk, they didn't realize it was going to take, again, 334,767,000 years into the future to finally meet up. I mean, we sometimes think, a year or two or 3 or 5 or 10 years is a long time, and it is. But let alone 334,767,000 years to finally meet up after. And this was around, I think, 1947, 1948. They finally seen each other. And it's been a while. It's been, like I say, it's been over 75 years, so the story can to come to fruition. But that's the kind of thing you have to understand, is that it's been a long time, but that's nothing compared to how long they haven't seen each other. For, again, 334,767,000 years. That's right. They're thinking, 75 years. It's been an old story. Well, not really, because again, all that time, incredible length of time where they don't see each other, but during their journeys, they would go to the different side of the planet, obviously, and they would go around the Earth's crust, and then when you're around the Earth's crust, you can go, above. You're as even the North Pole down to the poles of the Earth. So they were traveling different areas all throughout the planet Earth, just below the Earth's crust. So you're walking, and all this time, Holly was she just wanted to see her friend Elizabeth. She really wanted to. They never realized that 334,767,000 years would pass before they would actually see each other again. And it was one of those incredible stories where heartbreak and determination, endurance had to reach these the individuals, Holly and Elizabeth, and they really wanted to see each other after so long. But a lot of times they even said in the story, or even the email in the when they interviewed them, Elizabeth and Holly, that they gave up a lot of times. So even like after, say, 40,000 years, they thought, well, this is not going to happen. Not even 40,000 years, but 400 years. So you're thinking just a little bit of a time compared to the 334,767,000 years of them being away from each other. They finally were able to meet up, but who would have thought, after the millennia, the eons of time, that they would actually see each other, and that they gave up, but they just kept on walking in circles, and they went to different underground societies. They lived, they had offspring, and they didn't really know that they would ever see each other again. And it's one of those heartwarming stories on the podcast that you just get goosebumps, and you get, maybe not goosebumps, but you just get excited for these two individuals, because they were, like I say, and who knows, at this time when they were searching, it's not like they're always searching for each other. So they were always moving, and they weren't always doing that. Obviously, they were in their different societies, of the underground societies of the below the Earth's crust. Now we're talking about way below the Earth's crust, where they would dwell. And how do we know this? How do we not know that's true? Have we ever been to the underground society? No, of course not. So we have to realize that this is a true story, and Elizabeth and Holly are one of those individuals. They're still doing strong. They're, like I say, they're doing really good, and the secret to them, the longevity, is that they're down there. And a lot of times people don't realize how below the Earth's crust a person could survive and live longer. Yes. Now, I don't know if you want to quite live that long. 334,767,000 years. But like I say, they're still kicking. They're still doing good. They're doing their underground society sports and recreation and all that good stuff. And they're really doing good. They wanted me to let you know that they have GPS tracking devices. I think what happened was they lost both of their GPS tracking devices 334,767,000 years ago. And again, 1947, 1948, around that time, the late 1940s, is when they finally met up and they finally saw each other. But it took a while for this story to come to fruition because, again, let's face it, the email just got to me the other day, and like I say, Podcast Central wanted me to, they said, we need Random Green to go over this one. We need Random Green to cover this amazing story of Elizabeth and Holly, the individuals that went for a walk, and They never saw each other 334,767,000 years into the without seeing each other. And again, they gave up. They thought, well, I'll never see Elizabeth. Holly said that about Elizabeth, and Elizabeth said that about Holly. It's like, we'll just never see each other. They are quoted as saying. But through all the amazement of traveling, and not again consistently, but I mean, they went through other parts. Some parts of the time, Holly was saying, well, I could have been on the other side of the planet, and you could have been on the other side of the planet. Below the Earth's crust, of course. And they kept on searching, and it was through resilience that they found each other. And boy, they looked the same too. They were wearing different clothing, of course, but when they, like I say, they saw each other and they just were amazed, and they almost, that length of period of time, you kind of almost forget, but you do remember. And it's a heartwarming story of Elizabeth and Holly. 334,767,000 years of not seeing each other. And to think that eons of time between that time, they thought they would never see each other, but they end up meeting after that time. And you think about even like 1 million years, or 2 million years, or 3 million years. Just still nothing compared to the 334,767,000 years of not seeing each other. And just incredible length of time. And, unbelievable. Elizabeth and Holly are doing well. They want you to know Podcast Central and Random Green fans here on the podcast, they really wanted me to share this story that you don't take for granted. If you're ever going to go walking and you're never going to, you might take a few 100 million years to actually see each other. Not just a few 100 years, not just a few 100,000 years, but a few 100 million years where you'll finally be able to see each other. And we're like, whoa. Then you'll really appreciate time, because Holly and Elizabeth really thought that, they knew that absence makes a heart grow fonder, or whatever it's called. Absence makes a time grow fond, or whatever it was. They realized that it was a long time, and they're quoted as saying, boy, that was, how long was it, Elizabeth and Holly? And Holly goes 334,767,000 years. And Elizabeth was, yeah, you're exactly right. But it's, what year is it now? 1947, 1948. So hopefully this can get to the above ground, Hopefully it will be able to, and maybe within the next quarter of a century, which is nowhere near the time that they were away from each other, that this story finally got published. It's finally being broadcast, and it's an amazing podcast called the Random Green Podcast. Yes, I know. But again, this can be a heartwarming story, a lesson, another lesson. The fact that when you go somewhere and you say you're going for a walk, remember to bring your GPS tracking device of some sort. Back then, they did have GPS tracking devices 334,767,000 years ago below the Earth's crust. But nowadays, it's very important to remember, because the technology has, well, it's a little better than back then, but we don't know what it was back then below the Earth's crust, or in a subterranean society as Elizabeth and Holly when they lived, because obviously they're still kicking after over eons of time. But this is just a lesson to everybody that we need to remember, because you never know. Suppose you might go walking and you might not see somebody for 334 million. 767,000 years. You're like, well, okay, now I realize after listening to the Random Green podcast that this will be taken care of. And not only is this an amazing podcast, this is a public service announcement for the individuals across, yes, planet Earth, inside planet Earth, all around. And again, this is the Random Green podcast, and I just want to thank you for listening. You all have a great day now, and later.